Let me give you a little bit of background about data source. I suppose our aim as a company is to deliver strategies to problems that basically pay for themselves. And we do that using sort of advanced data techniques. Let me just try and bring up this. I'm having a bit of technical problems. Oh, here we go. So we implement digital strategies that solve problems and deliver results that pay for themselves. Interesting story. My business partner and I were sitting down having some pies in Bondi, actually, and we were discussing a name for our business. And my partner took some tomato sauce, spread it all around his pie, and it sort of occurred to us that data is sort of like, when it's effectively used, is like tomato sauce. It should be spread and it's tasty. And we believe that data should be spread wide within a business, because ultimately companies who make decisions based on data make more money and are more successful. So as our name suggests, we're a digital agency focused on data. We've got offices in Melbourne, Sydney, Tel Aviv, in New York. So let me give you a little bit of information about us. So that's me on the left. I've got sort of 7 years experience in analytics, conversion rate optimization, data, search, email. I started my career on eBay in my teens, progressed to a company called Deals Direct, and then on to another company called Catch of the Day, where I was running online marketing for a couple of years. I've been lucky enough to sort of work in a really exciting industry, and a few years ago, Daniel and I founded Data Source. Daniel made his grand entrance into the digital marketing space over 10 years ago when he subscribed over 1 million people into various mobile subscription services within a single year. Since then, Daniel has played a leading role in developing and implementing digital strategies for various brands, including Skype, Kazaa, AnsweringService.com, Deals Direct, and more. So currently, who do we work with? So here are some of the companies we've been lucky enough to work with, and we've been blessed in that we're exposed to some unbelievable data. And today's presentation includes a lot of the learnings we've had from working with these great companies. So just in terms of what we'll cover today, we'll have a look at what big data is versus little data. We'll look at a concept called macro and micro conversions. We'll also look at why little data is important, and then jump into 3 sort of examples of what little data is, specifically with regards to AdWords, attribution, and advanced segments, and we'll close off with a Q&A session. At the end of the webinar, we've got some great free actionable takeaways that we're happy to share. Usually we reserve these for our clients, but for the purpose of today, we'll be giving them away. I think you'll be presently surprised in how actionable and real these resources are. So stick around and let's get straight into it. So what is big data? So in the early 2000s, the craze was about sort of PPC and SEO. Marketers found Google as being an amazing source of traffic to drive their objectives. Fast forward 8 years, it's all about social media. Facebook, Twitter, and the world was sort of going through a revolution in that sense. And fast forward a couple more years, and 2011 was when sort of the coined phrase big data started, coming to life. So I hope this doesn't really offend anyone, but it really resonated with me. Big data is like teenage sex. Everybody talks about it. Nobody really knows how to do it. Everyone thinks everyone else is doing it, so everyone else claims they are doing it. So again, I hope it doesn't really offend anyone, but it really makes sense. It's just a coin phrase that everyone sort of talks about, but no one can really define exactly what it is. But let me try and give you an example. So according to Wikipedia, big data is a collection of data sets so large and complex that it becomes too difficult to process using on-hand database management tools or traditional data processing applications. So I'm not keen on defining exactly what it is, but in my experience, it's doing things like merging Google Analytics clickstream data with transaction data and CRM data to find actionable outcomes like the next best product to sell to each individual customer of yours, or predicting churn and the reasons why customers churn, or predicting what sort of content is going to engage your visitors the most. So that's sort of a bit of a roundup of what is big data. Next slide is about what is little data. So little data isn't about large organizations running sort of parallel software on tens of thousands of servers. It's about tiny parts that make up an ecosystem of data. Apologies. Oh. So it's about asking practical questions and solving day-to-day problems with whatever data you have. So sort of size doesn't matter. What matters is having the data of whatever size that helps us solve a problem or address the questions that we have in a practical way. So for many problems and questions, little data itself is enough. The data on, say, my household energy usage, or the local time of the bus, or government spending, these are what I call little data. Anything that can sort of be processed in Excel is what I call little data. So the most important thing to note here is that part of the reason why we use data is to find answers to problems or come up with solutions that we didn't know were there before. So it's irrelevant of how big the data set is. It's really about where the answers lie. So sometimes it's within little data, but sometimes it's sort of within big data. So it's important to realize as well. Now, I'm assuming that most people in this webinar, or if not everyone, is sort of familiar with Google Analytics. So for the rest of the presentation, a lot of the examples I'm going to give are going to be sort of relevant to Google Analytics. All right, so now that we've covered sort of the difference between big data and little data, let me show you sort of 3 examples. I'd assume that, most of you would be using Google Analytics day to day, and if you're not, you should. It sort of changes everything. So before I get into the 3 examples, I want to introduce a concept called macro and micro conversions. So there are 2 types of conversions in my mind anyway. No matter what you're measuring, macro and micro conversions are important to finding the answers to the questions you need answering. So let me give you an example. So macro conversions or macro goals are about context. When you look at a typical Google Analytics report, out-of-the-box metrics and dimensions that you get, they're sort of macro. They help you understand questions like, what is my overall site conversion rate? How many leads did we capture? What was the revenue from our PPC campaigns? How many transactions did we do last month? So they're not very good at sort of answering a specific question that can help you, say, run a campaign or have an actionable outcome. They're very good at understanding, where are we at today? It's good at setting context. So it's important to focus on measuring your macro, your sort of overall conversions, but for optimal results, you need to identify and measure your micro conversions as well. And the next slides I'm going to show you, specific examples of some micro conversions and what they are. So a micro conversion is really any outcome or action that leads to an economic benefit for your company. So they go beyond setting context and answer questions like, how many newsletter signups did we get? How many people viewed 5 pages or more of our website? So they're super interested in what I have to say or sell. Or how many people added a product to their cart that didn't purchase? Or how many people called our sales team as a result of being on the website? And again, the last one, how many people use live chat? And even beyond that, we can look at other engagement goals. How long did they spend on the site? These are, when defined properly, really, really insightful measures. So again, let me repeat, micro conversions are any outcomes or actions that lead to economic benefit for a company. So the micro steps, so micro conversions are the micro steps that a visitor takes before reaching macro or overarching goals. So let's have a look at this first example. It's about AdWords, and this data is pulled from a client. So just in terms of the screen resolution and what you can see, I know it's not a great image, but let me sort of just work you through it. But basically, the line that's highlighted there is a campaign, and this spreadsheet, this slide is sorted by ROI. And basically, this particular line doesn't show great results at sort of face value. The site it's lower than sort of average site conversion. Average order is lower. the cost to run that campaign is sort of really, really high. So, you know, a typical reaction here when sort of looking at macro level goals, i.e., you know, conversion rate, revenue, average order value, you know, bounce rate, these sort of things, would be to pause it because it's not reaching our goals. But with micro goals, sort of, if you introduce the concept of micro goals, the story changes dramatically. And also personifies why sort of engagement metrics matter, and I'll come to this exactly. So you can see that these highlighted circles with the arrows pointing up to the top section there are sort of custom goals that we've set up. They're what we call micro goals. So the first one I'll have a look at is, you know, people who viewed 5 pages or more. So we noticed that, you know, 90% of the traffic who ended up buying viewed 5 pages or more. So it's a really good segment to sort of identify who are your great your prospects from an engagement point of view. What did they do on site? And the one next to that is the same sort of correlation. 5 pages usually took about 4+ minutes to go through. So the site average for those two metrics were 21.57 and 12%, whereas if we looked at this campaign and compared those metrics, those micro goals were 85% higher than the average, the site average. So what that's really telling us is that these people who are coming in from this campaign spend a lot of time on our site and look at a lot of pages. Now, if you look over to the right-hand side there, if we compare these next 2 micro goals, was viewed a product page. That's a micro goal. You know, we want to measure how many people came to our site and measured and viewed a product page, and we also want to know how many people came to the site and looked and added something to their shopping cart. So on average, this campaign was 47% higher, so 47% more people viewed a product page, and 118% more than the site average added something to their cart. So, you know, initially we would have paused this campaign saying it's not hitting our ROI metrics, but when you introduce sort of micro conversions, the whole sort of dynamic changes, and all of these metrics show that this campaign isn't a good sort of driver of conversion, but what it's really important for is it's driver of upper funnel traffic. So traffic that helps sort of with awareness and consideration during a purchase phase. So again, without the micro conversions, you could have been losing traffic coming down your funnel because you are only looking at a macro level. Let's have a look at the next example. This is a pretty hot topic at the moment. It's called attribution. So attribution is about understanding a conversion path that a user takes when making a purchase. So if you think about, say, a soccer team, this is an example that Google Analytics themselves use a lot. You know, you've got defenders, midfielders, and strikers. The defender passes the ball to the midfielder to the striker kicks the ball into the goal. So in the above example, when we sort of applied back to you know, what we're talking about is you have a first visit came in via organic traffic, a second visit via direct, a third via a Facebook ad, and a fourth via a Google ad. So traditionally, Google Analytics sort of awards or says that the channel that should be awarded this sale or this conversion was the last click. And in this case, it was a Google ad. So the problem with this model is the other 3 channels before that, so organic, direct, and Facebook, assisted that sale, but don't get any credit. So when you're deciding, say, media mix or channel messaging, you could make sort of short-sighted decisions without taking the other 3 channels into consideration, without awarding them any credit for being involved in that conversion. So in this example, for example, you might say, you know what, Facebook doesn't seem to, on a last-click basis, Facebook isn't converting well for us. So you might decide, you know what, I'm going to move some budget from Facebook all the way to sort of back to my Google campaigns, because Google drives great last-click conversions. But, you know, in this case, you might be losing a ton of conversions simply because Facebook is more of an assisting channel than a last-click channel. And typically, your users may need sort of 4 channels. They may go through 4 channels to make a purchase, and all of a sudden you've reduced that to 3. You may have reduced your overall conversions. So diving in a bit deeper, Google Analytics out of the box has 3 attribution models, 3 ways to sort of say who gets awarded that sale. Was it the first guy? Was it the last guy? Was it the guys in the middle? Who gets awarded the credit for this purchase? So out of the box, last click attribution is the one we just explained. It's the last channel before somebody converted. Linear attribution means everyone gets equal credit. So on a $100 sale, if there was 4 paths, 25, 25, 25. And time decay attribution model is, as time goes on, each channel is sort of retroactively assigned a value or a credit, the first getting the lowest and the last getting the highest. So the thing here to remember is with all these models is there's no right or wrong model. The trick here is about not finding the best model. It's about comparing models and finding insights, you know, again through little data to sort of, you know, drive your goals and objectives. So this is actual data from a Google Analytics report. So the slide here shows a comparison between linear and time decay attribution models versus a last click model. And it shows the relative value of each channel when comparing the models. So if you have a look at line number 4, Google Display, if we looked at Google Display just on last click, meaning how many conversions, what's the dollar value of conversions that Google Display was the last click before someone converted, Google's telling us here that it was about $54,000. Whereas if you compare that to sort of linear and time decay, you can see there's a massive, massive difference. You know, linear is showing almost 360,000, and time decay is showing a value of almost 340,000. So there's an interesting sort of stat through little data analysis that you can sort of use to sort of optimize your media mix. So in this example, and I found this online, this was from a company called Amari. But basically, you know, after finding this sort of nugget, they had 7% of their total media spend was on Google Display. After adjusting, they decided, you know what, we're going to bump it up to about 17% of our total marketing budget. And the results was a 45% increase in sales with a 0% increase in budget. You know, unbelievably sort of astounding information. And basically, Google Display was a really important factor in a conversion. It was assisting a lot of sales. So if you would sort of cut Google Display out of that equation, you would lose a lot again of that upper funnel traffic that sort of went down through awareness, consideration, interest till an actual action, a purchase. You would lose all that and have no sort of results. So you know, sometimes you think you're sort of optimizing your media mix by pausing campaigns or channels because they're not bringing a good ROI. But in reality, you sort of have to have a look at the whole picture to understand how to do that. And the last example I want to look at is what's called custom segments. So if you're sort of familiar with custom segments, they're a great way to sort of slice and dice your metrics. Standard Google Analytics reports out of the box, they're only good at setting sort of macro goals and giving you context about macro goals. They don't really allow you to sort of dive in. So let's take bounce rate, for example. You know, bounce rate alone as a single metric is pretty useless. Unless it's sort of sliced with, say, a custom segment of new visitors versus returning visitors, it doesn't really have a lot of value. So if I told you bounce rate is, say, 30%, and then I said, you know what, now what do I do with that? It's good at setting context, but if I would say the bounce rate for new visitors is 70%, whereas the bounce rate for returning visitors is 10% or something like that, then, you know, all of a sudden there's a problem with, the problem isn't in our returning users. It allows you to sort of focus on where the problem is, and that, in this case, a 70% bounce rate of new visitors. So segments are really important to sort of slicing and dicing your data and coming up with sort of actionable outcomes. So this is a standard Google Analytics report. That arrow, if you click that, you get a standard drop-down of what we call macro conversions, of macro segments, and Google provide this sort of out of the box. They look at things like bounce rate, new versus returning, mobile, direct traffic only, non-bounce visits, sort of all very standard macro segments that are almost useless in a way. So a really great example of sort of how to, you know, find segments that are actually meaningful to your business, so micro goals that are meaningful to your business, is here. So this is sort of a standard setup that we do for a lot of our customers. So loyal customers is a segment we can slice and dice data by. So people have bought three or more times, for example, or big spenders is, revenue per pan session is like 3 times more than normal. And Google allows you to define this in Google Analytics, all the sort of definitions behind these custom segments. Or not provided keywords. Google recently have been rolling out through SSL encryption, basically the ability, well, there's no ability anymore basically to see any of the SEO keywords, the organic keywords that are brought in, and apparently, anecdotally, I hear it that about 85% are lost. But, understanding, things like how many of my keywords are not provided keywords is really important for a business to track so they can know how to adjust to that change. So AdWords branded keywords, AdWords non-branded keywords. So say you wanted to understand, mobile visitors. Are they coming in by branded keywords? So say, are they typing in data source? Or are they typing in, Google Analytics custom reporting? What sort of keywords? Blog commenters. Are people on our blog who are commenting more likely to purchase? Or are people, say, who added to a cart more likely to have a higher bounce rate or a lower bounce rate? These are sort of the segments that you can slice and dice your data by. So the great part about custom segments is it's really easy for me to share them. So if you're interested in getting our sort of 15 best practice segments, on the next slide I'll leave my Twitter handle and email. At the end of the presentation you can hit me up and I'll install them in your site for free, and they'll come sort of install into your site they'll be just viewable to you, so it won't affect sort of anybody else, and you'll be able to slice and dice your data with some of these sort of segments. And again, the point I'm making here is that custom segments really allow you to understand your little data, understand, what are the data sets that I have right now? Most people have Google Analytics, and how can I use that to actually come out with some sort of actionable outcomes? So before you sort of start worrying about big data, you should consider little data. Often the answers are found in the littlest of places. Size doesn't matter. Macro conversions are great at setting context, but offer very little value in terms of making decisions and finding insights. Micro conversions, on the other hand, are terrible at setting context, but without them, you'll never truly understand how to use sort of real data. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. If you've got any question, please use the chat pod, or I think we have a Twitter handle. Let me just get the guys to confirm what it is. I think it's Lunchtime Learning, #Lunchtime Learning, and we can use this time now for some sort of Q&A.
So we're going to have a bit of an open session in terms of questions. If you want to tweet your questions or queries through to Tzvi on the @S2M Digital handle with the #Lunchtime Learning, and hopefully he'll be able to fill you in on any of the blanks that have been there so far. So first one, Tzvi, what is an example of a little data strategy?
Okay, so generally strategy is an interesting question, but usually a company, when determining strategy anyway, looks at their goals and objectives. Where do I want to be in 5 months, 6 months, 10 months, a year, 2 years? And usually the next step after defining those goals is strategy. So for me, what would be a little data strategy? That would mean understanding and defining exactly what your goals and objectives are, and then using for some of the things that I showed you there, like custom segments and custom goals, to sort of really hone in on the goals and the metrics that you really need to measure for your business. So that's sort of a good example of little data strategy.
All right, fantastic stuff. And the next question has come through is from Phil Brown, and could you recommend a core set of metrics or measurements that should form a part of a data strategy?
So the answer to the question is probably no. Every business is different. For example, some of the micro conversions that I mentioned before, one of them was, interacted with the sales team over the phone, where Another business might need to measure live chat. That might be a really important sort of path to someone making a conversion. So I wouldn't say there's a core set of metrics, but from a micro level. But from a macro level, there's absolutely sort of core set of metrics. And the good part is Google Analytics out of the box sort of has all these amazing metrics for you to measure on. So these metrics are really good for for benchmarking. So, how many visits do we have? How many unique visits do we have? What was the revenue by traffic source? How many visitors did we have from mobile? What was the conversion rate by channel? So these are sort of the macro level sort of data and sort of core metrics that each company should be sort of looking at. And as a side note, we actually offer it as a service where basically, we'll come in, define those metrics, and deliver you monthly benchmarking reports. And on top of that, often off the back of it, we'll find that customers sort of want to look deeper into their data, and we'll set up a micro strategy as well for them.
Right, fantastic stuff. Tzvi, thank you very much for your time today, and your insight has been very, very useful. Ladies and gentlemen who have been watching and listening, we will be distributing a copy of this webinar via the S2M Vimeo channel. So if you've not managed to log in today, then we will send a follow-up and an opportunity for you to really get your head around it, digest the information, and also if you have questions or queries, or you're interested in talking to data source about what their business can do for you, then there'll be the opportunity for you to follow up there. Thank you very much.